Hi, my name is Chifanya. Welcome to another episode of the Cakeism Experience. So, we recently got the opportunity to do this cake. It's a 1936 Mercedes Benz Special Edition 500k Roadster. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful, but it's an incredibly beautiful car. So yeah, we had the opportunity. A client came to us with this commission, and I was super excited. But then also, car cakes, I won't lie, are not my thing because they are extremely specific. So I'm used to having a lot of artistic liberty when I'm working on a cake. If I feel that the flow of a cake has to be in a particular direction, I might decide to change a shape or something. But with a car, it's extremely specific. So the tire placement has to be in a particular way. The fenders have to be in a particular way. The lights have to be a specific shape. The front grille, you have to have the crown also in a specific place. Like, everything has to be really exact. And for someone like me who likes a lot of creative control and freedom in working on my cakes, I find it really difficult to have to stick to a particular blueprint for a design. But car cakes are as they are. Because if you change the shape of, for instance, the lights in a Porsche and make them like the lights in a Mercedes, it's no longer going to look like a Porsche. It's going to look like a Mercedes, even if the body of it looks like a Porsche. And so that's why when you're doing car cakes, it has to be super, super exact and super, super precise. And so we had literally 3 days to do this car. Now, the first step in the whole process was for us to get the blueprints for the car. And that was super difficult. I think because this is the particular model the client liked was a limited edition. It was this particular Mercedes-Benz 500k. But then the one that we were doing was a limited edition version. And so, for instance, you'll notice on the blueprint that there are no tires here, but on the car that the client sent us, there were tires. You see, there are tires here and at the other side. So that's one main difference. And then another difference is the lights. The placement of the lights. You see, when you open this up, the light placement is different for this as opposed to this one. This one has more lights. And there's so many other marked differences between the two different models. But then because we weren't getting the original blueprints for these, and we had very limited time, we had to just get on with it and start working. So we did it to scale. The cake was about 3 feet, 3.5 feet long. Now, because it's a sports car, it's a low riding car. It's not very high, and so to be able to get enough servings, you need to increase the scale so that you have a longer car, but the car is not as high. Because you see, the other thing about this car is that because it's a convertible, the middle part is taken out to be able to make room for the cushions, the steering wheel, the dashboard, and everything. So as you're making the cake, you have to make provision for the fact that you are going to have to scoop out the middle to make room for the seating, the steering wheel, and all those other internal components. You'll also have to make provision for the windscreen, which we're able to do out of gelatin. So it's something similar to this that we made. This is gelatin There's a special mixture. It's actually gelatin and Sprite, believe it or not, and then a bit of sugar. It doesn't taste the best, but it's edible. But yeah, so just so that you can say that your cake is 100% edible, we went with this option. I mean, otherwise you can decide to use acetate, but I feel like if you're able to use a component as an edible version, because it's cake, you might as well. Even though I must say this takes about 3 days to cure. It takes 3 days to dry, because obviously we're in Africa and we have high humidity. You can't do this overnight and expect it to dry. So it needs about 3 days for it to dry. So that's another thing. But so that's another element of the cake. Now, in terms of presentation, the client wanted the cake to make an entrance, and so we decided to make a descending cake. I've done loads of descending cakes, and this, however, was the first time I had made a car cake descend, a 3D car cake descend. Now, the way the car was designed, I did not want to put any support structures within the car, because then it would ruin the whole design. This car is a classic, and so I wanted to keep the car clean and let that be the main thing. And so we decided to design an acrylic box that was 20 millimeters thick. That's extremely thick. It's actually bulletproof. And so I designed a 20 acrylic box that was 4 feet by 2 feet, and then we put the cake in it. Now, the one thing about it is how this cake is, the weight is not balanced, because you have a situation where you've scooped out part of the cake to make room for the seating and all that, and then you have the front where there are these 2 extra tires. You have the back where there are 3 tires. So the front has 4 tires, the back has 3 tires, and then you have the added thing of half of the weight here only going towards this. So the bulk of the weight was to the front of the car. And with descending cakes, the weight has to be perfectly balanced. Otherwise, most hoists or most descending mechanisms would not work, because it has to be balanced. If it's not balanced, whatever you're trying to lift is going to topple over, or worst case scenario, even fall out. And so that was one of the things that had us really concerned. Aside from the fact that the cake itself is extremely complicated, the presentation method gave added complexity, because we had to make sure that we made the cake in the box positioned perfectly so that it was balanced, and then when the cake was hooked up, it wasn't going to start dancing, but it was going to be able to be lifted up perfectly into a case. So we built another gold acrylic case on the top to hide the cake in. So when it was time for the cake to be cut, the cake descended from the box and then they cut it up. So literally there was just so many moving parts to this cake, aside from the fact that, you know, we had to get the design right in 3 days. I would normally, if under normal circumstances I had the luxury of time, I'll probably spend a minimum of 2 weeks on this cake, just because I would have loved to get the original blueprint to the car to be able to know the exact measurements for these tires, how far the lines go and all that. But then again, we have very limited time in most of these situations, and so we just have to just get to it. And so it was a pleasure being able to work with amazing creatives like Design by JR, who was of immense help. He designed the backdrop for the celebration, and he created a 12-foot backdrop that was specifically for this cake. and that's amazing to me, to be able to work with creatives who understand what it is that we do. And the cake was the coup de grace of the whole celebration. And so I hope you enjoy this week's episode of the Cakeism Experience. And remember, COVID-19 is still very real, so continue to mask up and stay safe. Till next time.